I'm Bob Hutchinson. Welcome to the DollarCentsShow.com, making sense of every dollar. If you do not understand financial matters, you are in the right place. If you don't understand interest rates, you are in the right place. If you don't understand inflation, you don't understand monetary policy from fiscal policy, you are in the right place. If you don't know how to buy or sell a house and understand what goes into it, you are in the right place. Now, if you haven't studied economics, finance, accounting, business administration, things of that kind, which are typically done at the college or university level, then the chances are excellent that you are financially illiterate. And it's not really your fault because these are subjects that really most people never do study. And so, probably over 90% of the people in this country are financially illiterate. Therefore, if you are a doctor, a lawyer, a mechanic, a carpenter, a teacher, a nurse, chances are very good that you are financially illiterate. So, if that's the case, you've come to the right place. If you want to gain an understanding of these things. Now, just a reminder that we are not giving advice. We're not financial advisors. We're not investment advisors. We're not giving financial advice. We're not giving legal advice. For that matter, we're not giving any sort of professional advice. And likewise, there are no express or implied warranties of fitness for particular purpose or accuracy regarding any of the information given here. So the whole idea is to present this material to you for no charge, for free, so that if you don't have the time or the money to pursue these subjects or at the college or university level, the idea here is to give you some of that knowledge. And in addition, I've been involved in, as you'll come to learn in the following segments, in areas that are very relevant. And so I plan on giving you a lot of real life examples from my experience which I want to put to work for you so that you can combine that with the other sort of textbook forms of knowledge we'll be presenting and to try to strengthen your financial hand as much as possible. Yeah, the whole idea is to help give you the financial tools so that you can be successful, so that you can have a financial future, so that you can make sense of all of these things and have a full and rich life. So that's going to do it for now. Look forward to having you join us in the episodes to come. Welcome to the premier edition of the DollarCentsShow.com, making sense of every dollar. As mentioned, I'm Bob Hutchinson, and am delighted to have you join us today. This podcast is something we're very excited about offering you because I think that it will provide some not only knowledge of business, but that together with the experience that I have gained and developed over several decades, I think can provide an almost unique insight into a lot of areas of business. And the reason I started this is because I have a lot of empathy for people, not only who are financially illiterate, but also younger, because I've talked to a lot of you, and I know that you have a lot of concern about the future, about your future, about, do you have a financial future? These are all great questions, and I'm here to tell you you can have a great financial future. But of course, you've got to know how to proceed. And that's really what a lot of this podcast has to do with. Um, just a word or two about me before we get further underway. I'm a guy who has studied economics, finance, accounting, things of that kind. But in addition to all of that, I have had several decades of legal experience. And this experience has included major transactions, real estate transactions, commercial transactions, business combinations, kinds of transactions. and a real emphasis on litigation. So that means I've tried a lot of cases and arbitrations and uh, significant ones. And I've had countless hearings, settlement conferences, settlement negotiations, hearings, and the like. And one thing I want to point out to you is that for over a decade of that experience, I spent um, essentially suing financial advisors. Why? Because they had provided horrible advice and had caused tremendous losses to very ordinary people. And of course, people that could not afford those losses. And what I discovered over the course of all of that experience was that so many financial advisors did not know what they were doing. I mean, and very arguably, a lot of them were financially illiterate. Now, don't misunderstand me. There are a lot of good financial advisors out there and all of that. But it really highlighted, in my mind, a significant problem that was out there. But at the same time, gave me a lot of insight into various areas that I think can translate into a real benefit for you. Um, and with this litigation experience and all of that comes or came the art of the negotiation, and that's something that I see very lacking in people today. They have no idea of how to negotiate. Should they negotiate? Can they negotiate? And if they do, what is it that they should try to do? And all of this comes back to real money. Now, the so the next question in your mind might very well be, well, what's in it for me? And the answer is a lot of money. I mean, over the course of your life, if you're a younger person, it should, I would think, translate something on the order of at least $200,000. Now, look, this is not a promise or a guarantee. No, it's an educated guesstimate. And it comes from the fact that you will probably be buying and selling one or more houses and buying and selling one or more cars over your lifetime. And that alone can amount to that kind of money. And believe me, I've seen in my professional life, not only in a commercial sense, but also on the so called retail or residential side of things, where tremendous amounts of money are left on the table. And throughout this podcast, I'm going to give you real life examples, not only from cases I've handled, but also things I've seen in personal experience that will show you in black and white uh, the kinds of significant amounts of money that I'm talking about. So, in other words, we're going to touch on not only key concepts in business, but it's not going to be a bunch of pie in the sky stuff. I mean, these are going to be real life examples. And throughout this whole thing, I'm going to strive to show you hard, concrete examples in everything that I talk about. Um, so that alone uh, should should give you a huge leg up, really, in life. Now, the next thing I want to touch on is financial literacy. What is it? I mean, it may sound like, in a way, a basic question, but in one sense, it isn't. Financial literacy is understanding the financial world, and it's understanding the rules of the game. And throughout these podcasts, I'm going to use different analogies, and one will be a football analogy. Of course, you could call it football, you could call it soccer, basketball, lacrosse, anything you wanted to. But the idea are rules of the game, and the rules of the game, as alluded to, include such things as finance, accounting, economics, but they also include deal making, understanding human nature, street smarts, um, very important. And a lot of people, especially at a younger age, don't have that, in addition to the other kinds of training. but common sense and human nature. That is more or less what constitutes financial literacy. And I would say at the same time, this is something, financial literacy, that very few people have. I would say over 90% of the people in this country. And I also want to point out right away, you can relax because you don't have to be a math wizard. I hear that all the time. People say, well, I'm not very good at math. Well, guess what? You don't have to be. I'm going to explain these things in ordinary language that can be understood. And you're not going to have to solve quadratic equations or anything, or no calculus or anything of the sort to understand what I'm going to be talking about. And the other thing is that if you're wondering why you're financially illiterate, it's not necessarily your fault at all. Why? Because unless you pick this up on your own, and believe me, some people do, some people will study the areas I've talked about on their own. I know I did. And studying the basic textbooks that comprise these subjects, all right? But for most people, unless you have studied business administration, pursued a degree in business administration at the college or university level, or study economics or accounting or finance at the college or university level, the chances are excellent that you are financially illiterate. So you might ask yourself, well, why didn't I have exposure to any of this stuff while I was in school? And the answer is because your teachers did not know it. In other words, chances are excellent your teachers did not know anything about accounting, economics, finance, things of that kind. And that is why today there are a lot of doctors, lawyers, teachers, and people of every kind of trade or profession that have no clue about this stuff. Well, that is exactly what this podcast is aimed to address, to meet this problem head on. And I put in here, millionaire will show you how. Well, if you're a younger person, there's a way to do it. Now, here again, I'm not going to guarantee, hey, you'll be a millionaire. But what I will do is I will show you a way to achieve that goal. And that goal is not, over the course of time, anything that's necessarily out of anyone's reach. And it has everything to do with saving and investing money and using the power of compound interest, which we'll talk about, which Warren Buffett, the famous investor, once described as the eighth wonder of the world. And it is. Now, one of the things that we're going to stress throughout this podcast is simplicity. Now, the $5 version of that is the KISS formula. Keep it simple, stupid. The $25 version of that is simplicity marks the master and complexity the apprentice. So we don't want to be an apprentice. Remember that TV show, The Apprentice? Well, fine, but we want to become a master, right? We don't want to be a journeyman. We don't, at some level, we have to start that way, right? I mean, we have to crawl before we can walk. And I have people say, oh, financial literacy, let's talk about investing in stocks right away. Well, of course, but here again, we want to be able to crawl before we walk. In other words, we want to have the basic tools to begin to understand what is a good stock versus a bad stock. What is risk? What's the difference between an income statement and a balance sheet? What's a cash flow statement? And these are all tools that we're going to need. And I mean, back to the football analogy, on simplicity, Vince Lombardi, the Vince Lombardi Trophy, the legendary Green Bay Packers coach, he said, Fundamentals, boys, fundamentals. And that was his way of saying simplicity, simplicity, simplicity. And so that's what we're going to stress. And we're going to, in that connection, we're going to highlight various themes throughout. One is strength versus weakness. What we want to do is build a strong financial foundation so that we can and move toward building a strong balance sheet. And again, we'll talk about what that is. In other words, build a strong financial position and get away. What we don't want is a weak financial position. And believe me, if you don't understand finances, if you're in financial difficulty right now or financial pain, that's what we want to get you out of and get you to a point where you understand the difference between financial weakness and financial strength so that you can strive toward that goal of financial strength. So the and let's just pull something up on that right now. Okay, so let's consider the average family today. The average family today does not have $1,000 for financial emergencies. And any of you that have been in the real world for more than a couple of days probably knows that these emergencies, they come up, right? It's not if, but it's when. So if you only have $1,000, that's a financially weak position. The average family has around $10,000 in credit card debt, and that is financially weak. And it's weak for a whole variety of reasons, which we'll get into. We'll be talking about credit cards, and not only just credit cards, but interest and how interest is calculated, and some serious traps you can fall into with credit cards, things like that. Now, when we talk about money, let's also consider why. I mean, money, obviously, to state the obvious, is it's important, right? But I think what's as important is to understand what the consequences are of money versus financial stress. If we put ourselves into a financially strong position, what we're really in part doing is we're minimizing the financial stress. And is that important? Well, we know that it is important, right? Financial stress is the most common reason for divorce. And let's face it, divorce is not a good outcome. It's not typically a good outcome for the people involved, not only psychologically, but also financially. I mean, typically when people get divorced, their standard of living goes down. And then obviously, it's typically not a good outcome for the kids involved, right? That mother father relationship is split up, it's split apart. And they suffer the consequences of that. Now, in addition, we're also going to be talking about some very important financial concepts, and one of which, and we're going to have adult conversations here. And one of those important financial concepts, almost a universal law, is there is no free lunch. And I mean, Milton Friedman, who won the Nobel Prize in Economics, I think in 1974, stated that truth, as have economists over the years. And if anyone out there who thinks there is a free lunch, or, well, better yet, anyone who tells you there's a free lunch, run, Forrest, run. Hold on to your wallet and get away as fast as you can. So, in getting back to the football analogy for a minute, and the importance of financial literacy, if you were to play football tomorrow or soccer tomorrow, for example, but you didn't know the rules, well, the first thing you'd want to know is where's the stadium? or the field. I mean, you don't want to be 10 miles away from it, right? I mean, you want to know exactly where it is. And then once you get there, you want to know who the teams are. And you want to know who the coaches are. You want to know what the rules are. You want to know, I mean, is there a league? And you want to know what the plays are. You want to know what the positions are. You want to be able to call some plays. And better yet, you want to be able to score, right? And if you're playing football, you don't want to get sacked. You don't want to have your face in the dirt all the time, right? You want to be able to score. Not only do you want to score, but you want to win. You don't want to lose. You don't want to, lose and be taken advantage of because, you're not prepared. And, when preparation meets opportunity, believe me, you score, you win. So part of what we're doing here is we're putting together the preparation, right? You're not going to play football if you can't run more than 5 feet, uh, or soccer. I mean, you got to be in aerobic condition, right, to do that. You're not going to go out for track, if you don't have any aerobic capacity that you've trained for and built, right? If you can't, you don't have, at the University of Alabama football team, I know a few years ago, one of the benchmarks to even touch the football field is you had to bench press at least 225 pounds 8 times. And if you couldn't, in other words, if you didn't train to develop that kind of strength, and that is strength, by the way, um, as then you didn't. I mean, you could not even think about playing. And so this is what we're talking about. We're talking about developing that strength, not only that strength of knowledge, but to understand what that strength is and how we get there. Um, because at the end of the day, as mentioned, you can have a financial future. You can be financially strong. And so that's what we're after. So that's going to do it for this time. But very glad you could join us and look forward to having you next time. Thanks for joining us. Just wanted to mention that all material in these segments are subject to the copyright laws, and therefore there is to be no unauthorized recording or transcription of any of the materials here without our express written permission, and that a new segment will be released every Monday morning at 7 a.m. Mountain Time. So look forward to seeing you again.